Welcome everyone. Welcome everyone. It is good to have so much camaraderie here in the Veterans Military Affairs Committee. It's always great to be with colleagues and our visitors today that have joined us for our last interim joint committee meeting on Veterans Military Affairs and Public Protection. Clerk, would you call the order roll?
Senator Berg, Senator Boswell, here. Senator Higdon, Senator Nunn, here. Senator Reed, here. Senator Richardson, here. Senator Smith, Senator Tishner, here. Senator Wilson, Representative Blanton, present. Representative Bratcher, here. Representative Dossett, Representative Dotson, here. Representative Freeland, Representative Fugit, here. Representative Gooch, here. Representative Hart, here. Representative Johnson, here. Representative Lewis, Representative Maddox, Representative Massaroni, Representative Moore,
present.
Representative Proctor,
present.
Representative Roberts,
Here.
Representative Sharp, Representative Stevenson, Representative Tackett Lafferty,
Present.
Representative Thomas,
Present.
Representative Wesley, Co-Chair McCool, Co-Chair Deneen.
Here.
4, 7, 10, 12.
We have a quorum? There being a quorum present, we are empowered to do business today. I would like to remind all of our committee members that we do have some members that are joining us via Zoom today because of a legislative conference. So we want to thank them for taking the time out of their busy schedule to make it a point to be with us today. So thank you all that are joining us through Zoom. Also, if you have a cell phone, please turn that on silent during our committee meeting. At this time, I would ask Senator Richardson if he would lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Representative Roberts.
Please join me in prayer. Father, we thank you for your Son. We thank you for your grace and your salvation. And we thank you for our service members and our first responders. This is especially important to us in Kentucky right now, and they have put themselves at risk to keep us safe in times of disaster and times of need. When we ask for your guidance, we ask for your safety over those amazing men and women protecting America and protecting Kentucky. We ask that your wisdom guide us as we conduct this meeting. It's in your Son's name, Jesus, we pray. Amen.
Amen. Before we do the approval of the minutes, does any member have a guest present today with us today that you would like to recognize? Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to take a moment of personal privilege and welcome my mother and my father, Sherman and Diane Dotson, and my wife, Tressa, here with me today. Thank you.
Please make them feel welcome, folks. Any other members seeking recognition? All right, I'll take my own. I would like to welcome my wife has joined us today, and a close friend of mine, Chuck Head, he works on my behalf when I'm not in my district, so I would like to welcome both of them to today's meeting. Thank you for being here. This being the last interim committee meeting on Veterans, Military Affairs, and Public Protection, I also want to be remiss if I did not thank all of our veterans this week. There's been lots of celebrations throughout our districts, and I know each member has attended these events and shown their gratitude, and we will do so here in our committee as well. So we are very thankful for the service that is provided and the dedication of all of our veterans. We are here because they have allowed us to be here, and they have granted us the freedom to do our business. And so we are very grateful for their services, and if there is a service member or a retired service member or a veteran here, would you please stand at this moment, be recognized. Thank you. As you can see, we have a lot of our members that are veterans. All right, folks. At this point, I hope everybody has had a copy of the minutes. I need a motion to approve the July minutes. We have a motion. None. Seconded. Boswell. All in favor, say aye. Those opposed, like sign. All right, moving on to our agenda today, folks. We have first up the Department of Military Affairs and Kentucky National Guard update with Major General Halladin Lamberton. Thank you for being at the table already, sir. I'm encouraged by your eagerness. Thanks for always being here with us, sir. You've done a great job, and it's been great working with you through the summer and through the regular session. You've been a great leader, and we're very, very proud to have you today. So just please introduce yourself for the record, and you may begin.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chair, thank you. I appreciate it. Ladies, gentlemen, it's good to see a number of you again. I'm Major General Hal Lamberton, the Commanding General or the Adjutant General of the Kentucky National Guard. And as you can see, I brought an entourage with me this morning. So I'll say I'll take all the help I can get. So as I share some information with you all this morning, and I defer to your agenda, but if anybody has any questions, feel free to speak up in deference to yourself, Mr. Chair, of any of the materials that I'm speaking of. It's more so going to be lately of some of our more recent actions that I wanted to share with you all, and some of you are probably already tracking. But just last week, we had a cyber exercise. We called it Cyber Bluegrass. And I believe a few of you all were able to get out and attend it, receive an orientation during our DV or Distinguished Visitors Day. But this is unique not just to the Kentucky National Guard, not just to the Commonwealth, but to be straightforward, and some of you are perhaps already aware, we have no like exercise anywhere in the southeastern quadrant of the U.S., or FEMA Region 4, if you're familiar with it. So there are numerous cyber exercises that take place through the Guard and a few other entities around the country, but nothing in our region. So just some statistics that I pulled out to share with you all, and some of you may be aware of it already, but according to our FBI offices here in the Commonwealth, in 2023, we had in excess of 4,600 cyber attacks. At the same time that the folks in the FBI acknowledged that number of attacks, they also estimated that's perhaps only 15% of the number of attacks that take place. So in other words, the majority of attacks even the FBI doesn't necessarily learn about. So if you take that number further, of those known attacks, those resulted in approximately $48 million lost dollars due to those attacks. And, I'm speaking of ransomware type of attacks, and that impact not just on government entities or the military, but public and private companies as well. But extrapolate that number a little bit further. So if you figured it out, and yes, I did the math, from that 15% of about 4,600, just for simplicity's sake, if you spread that across 100% and reach out evenly to 120 counties, that works out to basically about 260 attacks per month, per county. So think of that, that we have some counties that are very heavily dominated with urban areas. We have some counties that are much more rural, and I'd offer across the board, the more urban counties, that they have, by virtue of their own financial means, their own cyber departments, if you will. Louisville, for example, Lexington, Northern Kentucky, each one of them has an office of 6, 5, and 5 personnel to address, to deal with such attacks. The more rural counties, they have nobody. And Hal Lamberton's perspective, that makes some of our rural counties more susceptible, more vulnerable to such an attack. So this was some of the initial thoughts that we had behind setting up a cyber exercise. Although we initiated it within the National Guard, it is not just a Kentucky National Guard event. So when we put this together, and I don't know if I've got anybody from emergency management sitting behind me, in the first responders world, and some of you folks have probably heard something similar, that if you're a first responder in any capacity, fire, police, EMS, some other entity, you don't want to be passing out your business cards there at the scene or the site of an incident. In other words, you want to have the relationship prior to an incident. That was also another founding part of the mindset for setting up this cyber exercise, that we wanted to bring together the different entities who could be involved or engaged in some sort of a cyber incident, if it's specified to a particular locality, county government, some municipalities, something even smaller, or something much larger on a regional basis that extends beyond the borders of the Commonwealth. So we brought together different entities: the Kentucky National Guard, the Kentucky Emergency Management Office, the Commonwealth Office of Technology, the Kentucky Office of Homeland Security. Had we not been currently going through a federal government shutdown, we also would have had the FBI participating. We also would have had CISA participating. We additionally brought together other military entities outside of the Commonwealth. And the intent there was to reach out to all of the states in the southeastern quadrant of the U.S. and all of their emergency management departments. And again, it wasn't just relegated to that industry, but we brought in universities. For example, Murray State was a participant. The University of Louisville was a participant. And I've spoken with some of you all that you are aware, if not more so than I still, in appropriate reference to everything that's UK, we went down to Georgia a while ago, and in Georgia they've got what they refer to as a GCC, a Georgia Cyber Center. And they, in turn, some of you, I can see by the nodding heads, are familiar with it. They have a standing cyber center on an academic campus that has brought together government entities, military entities, emergency management entities, public and private sectors, and the academics, where their focus is not just an operational dynamic in response to a cyber type of an event or incident, but there's also a teaching component as well. So that was also a driving mindset for the variety of organizations we brought together in this exercise. And this exercise was not just a one-time deal. From my perspective, I believe that we are already successful, just that we executed it, that we were able to bring together a variety of entities, even into the midst of a federal government shutdown. But we'll take what was achieved there, having become more familiar with these different organizations, let alone the individuals who represent them, do the proverbial lessons learned from this year's exercise, apply that to see where we can improve upon it, launch it again next year. And my mindset in particular, this is an enduring exercise, because it's not just a one-time done and you're complete with it, but as the cyber world evolves, as the IT world evolves that we all have to deal with, we want this exercise to evolve, not just in the different entities that it brings together, but the types of issues that it also is compelled to address. Some of you all are probably familiar, and I want to give credit to our Kentucky Emergency Management Department because of what they refer to as the ESFs, or the emergency support functions. Just within the past year, they included a new ESF, specifically ESF 17, to explicitly deal with cyber incidents. That this was broken out from the communications ESF and across the entire country. For the 54 states and territories that have an emergency management department, only a total of 18 have an ESF that's exclusively devoted to cyber. And I would offer and contend that it's that unique of a dynamic that it impacts us and impacts all of us across the full spectrum of organizations and entities. And to get ahead of it, our folks in KYEM are very much at the forefront of the majority of states for doing so. Kind of coupled with that as well, and you all may be tracking this additionally. So in the Kentucky National Guard, by virtue of our force structure, by virtue of the types of units that we've got in it, we have more cyber trained professionals than any other organization here into the state. And I'm speaking of government organizations from state to local, city, county, any other public organizations, any other academic organizations. So what I'm getting at is that we had signed a MOU, a memorandum of understanding, with both the Commonwealth Office of Technology, with the Kentucky Office of Homeland Security, that if they become aware of any type of a cyber-related incident, that whoever presents that to them can be relayed to the Kentucky National Guard, where we can send folks out in response to such an incident. The ideal scenario is that we would have counties, and we have had some counties call upon us to come on out and at least do an assessment to get a sense, and in particular for their awareness of their vulnerabilities or where their weaknesses, and specifically to address and improve upon that situation. And as you ladies and gentlemen are probably aware, since we're your National Guard and we're a state entity, that the cost for calling us out to make such an assessment is nothing. So it's something, because we're blessed here with our National Guard and the types of units we got available to us, we can do that. Not all states have the type of force structure and the capability that we do that enables them to do so. But here we are offering that. We're offering it through different venues. As I said, that there are several counties that have already taken us up on it. And actually, to each one of you all, I defer to your judgment as you work with your respective constituencies and local government. Please make mention of this. You know, what does the Guard gain from it directly? Well, maybe a little bit of experience for having done something like that, but there is no profit. There is no monetary type of benefit at all, and it's just part of what we do. And so to make folks aware of that, you know, habitually when folks think of the Guard, they tend to think of, that they stack sandbags in response to a flood, or they respond to catastrophic crashes, which I'll address in a little bit as well. But we do a little bit more into the cyber world. I would contend we have more capability for a response because of your Kentucky National Guard and the cyber-trained individuals we've got in the organization. Sir, before I move on to the next, I think I saw a hand pop up.
Yes, sir. We have a couple of questions here before we move on. First, I'd like to call on Representative Blanton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Major General. Always good to see you, sir. Thank you for your leadership with our National Guard. You all do a fine job, and we're very proud of you. When we talk about cybersecurity and we talk about the massive amounts of attacks that we're incurring here in the Commonwealth, is there anything that you would be able to provide the committee members if we're talking to a constituent of things that they need to be on the lookout for, of something that potentially they could be attacked at home on their own personal computers and things?
To be straightforward, Representative Blanton, no. Now, I'm not saying I cannot get such information together, but by virtue of the quality and the knowledge and the expertise of some of the folks that I do have, we can put something together. I would offer, I don't know if I've got anybody here in the room from the Kentucky Office of Homeland Security, but I believe on their website they do address such issues, and they have offered such material. But what I'll do is a follow-up and share that through the chair and to everybody here with the VMAP, such information that would impact individuals and what they can be on the lookout for. The concern I would offer as well, and the targets of ransomware attacks are not so much the individuals, but the organizations who might have a little bit more in the way of resources, if you know what I mean, that would make them a target for such an attack. And that's why the Coles office does put it out on their website. But again, I'll follow up with the individual and share that with the entire VMAP.
Thank you, Major General.
Thanks,
you,
sir.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Higdon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Representative Blanton kind of hit on what I was going to ask, but General Lamberton, thank you for your leadership. Always great to work with you, and I appreciate the things you do for the Commonwealth of Kentucky and the citizens. The cybersecurity, and you alluded to Homeland Security had the contact information if we had somebody that needed. That's always a big question, who do you contact? So having a good contact or knowing where to send that someone who inquires would be very helpful. And you say I can find that now on the at Homeland Security website, or where would I find that?
Yes, sir. So literally reaching out to both the Kentucky Office of Homeland Security, also the Commonwealth Office of Technology, and because of the MOU that we've assigned with them, I would offer they would in turn reach out to our IT folks, or we got two entities, CPT, a cyber protection team, also a DCOE element, a defensive cyber operational element. It's folks who work in those entities who would be able to respond to such an issue. My impression, because, and I defer to you ladies and gentlemen, most folks don't know that type of capability resides in the National Guard, but when they think of an incident, Homeland Security or the state level Office of Technology, what would be their first go-to source, that they do have the conduit to us to be able to respond, if that helps.
It would be really good when you give somebody information so they don't have to go through that web of trying to get to exactly the right person. Is it possible to have a contact, a place that we could send people that, here is the number, here's the person you can talk to? Does that exist, or just tell them to go to Homeland Security and figure it out?
I will make sure it exists.
Okay. But it would be, like I said, I understand people, when they call state government, then they kind of get
Lost?
Well, they get transferred from one person to another, and then they turn around and call me, and they're frustrated and said, can you figure out where I'm supposed to go? And nothing negative against what you're telling us. I'm just saying it's nice if we know exactly where to send them.
Yes, sir. And if I can, I'll add that to what both of you gentlemen brought up. So we're striving to get word out. We've been doing this for a couple of years now, but through some other venues like the GLIC or the Governor's Local Interests, or CACO, or the Kentucky Magistrates and County Judges Association. So to reach people through these types of venues to share the information, what we can do for them. And I defer to your all's awareness. I do believe that we can't just push it out one time and anticipate everybody will pick up on it, but it's a continual effort. And to your point, there's so many, Hal Lamberton's statement, there's so many resources and references and capabilities. How the heck did people find out about them? So it's just a case of the redundancy of communication and communicating with folks and giving them that specified POC that you alluded to multiple times. if that makes sense.
Again, thank you for what you do for the Commonwealth. Certainly appreciate your service.
Thanks, sir.
Representative Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, General Lamberton. I just have two questions right now, just mainly focused on taking care of our service members while they're serving and once they're retired. The first one, from my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong about this, National Guardsmen who are put onto state active duty, they're not put onto hazard pay, even whenever they're taking on jobs that in many ways otherwise would be covered under that. Is that correct?
There is not an associated hazardous duty pay. I think this is where you're going.
Yes.
That, for example, to build kind of a corollary, if we have folks responding to a celebratory event or, offering a color guard, fairly minimal impact or concern or hazards associated with it, as opposed to like the folks who responded to the crash up in Louisville last week. So the hazardous duty pay, I believe, is a pertinent component that does need to be addressed. And I believe, and defer to your knowledge, it is being addressed through legislative channels and through the Kentucky National Guard Association at this point. So it's an example of another evolving dynamic to strive to take care of our folks. There is a component to our service members if they get injured on state active duty that they come under workers' comp should that occur. But I defer to your all's knowledge. I would say that workers' comp isn't sufficient for the types and sometimes the catastrophic types of traumatic injuries that could occur.
Absolutely, and you and I are definitely aligned on that issue. I think that our guardsmen are some of Kentucky's best, obviously, and that leads me to another issue where you're in the National Guard, you're put on to federal active duty. Post-traumatic stress is something that's generally covered, but from my understanding as well, that's not necessarily the case for state active duty, but yet we do see individuals on state active duty who do experience pretty horrible sights as a result of their service. And I was just wondering if you had any thoughts regarding coverage for post-traumatic stress as a result of state active duty as well.
Straightforward, sir. I'll say you're 100% right on the mark. So, I mean, what more could I add to that aspect? But actually, that's maybe kind of a good segue in that one of the other things that I was going to speak of, if you'll bear with me just a moment and kind of build a framework to come back to answering you. So I was also going to speak of our response to the crash that occurred up in Louisville this past week. And as catastrophic as it is, and as some of you folks know, perhaps better than I, the ongoing investigation by the NTSB folks, or they say, and that type of dynamic can take a year or 2 years, and I'm going off on a little bit of a branch, but having an in brief by the head of that team, it's not that they're delaying, and it's really not that they're even distracted by other events, but as that gentleman described, that they want to make absolutely sure they get everything right before they report it publicly. And I'm kind of inclined to think that that's the right mindset. Before I share information with you all, before you share information with your constituents, you want to be sure that you have the accurate, most credible information that does go out. That's what they do in response to it. But for our folks who responded to that, and some of you, again, are probably aware, the 123rd Air Wing is basically right across the runway from the UPS hub up there in Louisville. And so anybody with a firefighter type of background would know that it's sometimes you just rush out the door and whoever gets there first. Our folks, while they were one of 200 plus firefighters responding to that incident, and to my knowledge, firefighting teams came from as far away as northern Kentucky in response to it. Ours were first on the scene because of that. So part of their action, and I defer to folks in the room who have that type of experience, that they were sort of clearing the way to enable other firefighting teams to gain access to some of the more crucially hit areas. So those folks were certainly exposed to a significant hazard that is not part of their normal duty day. But we also had a CST team. So some of y'all are probably familiar with it. CST, Civil Support Team. Basically, they are a team that gets launched in conjunction typically with local law enforcement to make an assessment of toxic materials that could be in the area. And so they had been working for like the first 36 hours on site there as things started to settle down. But some of you all probably saw the clips, the video of the smoke cloud raising and drifting across the airspace, and especially for folks who are from the area where there were local announcements to avoid it because of the toxicity of the air that was around the immediate area. That as I first went to it, you'd see a lot of first responders who were not in their PPE or protective equipment wearing masks because of the uncertainty of the types of materials. That's where the CST was able to identify others to the toxicity in the area, to the types of materials that they could be exposed to and how to prepare for it. But those guys, likewise, in such a response, they had to wear their own PPE so that they themselves couldn't become exposed or victims. But to your point, I would offer, and we did that last week, but there have been numerous times throughout the year where the CST, where our firefighting folks, where other organizational entities we got into the Guard respond to such events. And is the hazard there? Absolutely. Do we need protection from such a hazard? Absolutely. I'm a proponent for such an inclusion with state active duty response.
Thank you, General, and thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Dotson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, General Lamberton, for your service to our country. Going back to the cyber attack issue, when you look at how AI is constantly evolving and it's taken on its own, if you will, an entity of its own, how concerning is that to you when it comes to our security on a state level, even on a federal level, with AI? Because even among legislators, there is some that would take the cap off and say, let AI evolve. Then there's some of us that are like, let's put the guardrails in place. And I just want to hear from you. You've been in a high-level position, how you personally feel about it.
Yes, sir. So you asked me how I personally feel about it. You're going to get Hal Lamberton's response as opposed to General Lamberton's response.
General Lamberton, if that's okay.
That's a little bit different response. So is it a concern? Absolutely, because I think, and this is kind of a parallel thought, but I believe it comes back to what you addressed, remembering a conversation of years ago that the internet was not regulated in any way. And so folks could do, to a certain extent, folks do whatever that they aspire to do without concern for a left and right limit, without concern for regulations or laws. It has evolved over time, so it is a little bit more constrained for appropriate material, but we still have the black web we hear reference to. AI, General Lamberton's impression, offers huge potential and much more than, I haven't fully thought through all of its applications, but what it can do is beneficial to us, but I would offer it at the same time, and I think this is where you're going with it, with every significant change, especially if it has a community-wide impact, that there are going to be pluses and minuses to it. Our country evolves, our society evolves, AI is part of the evolution at this junction. So how do we control it to govern more of the beneficial impact and lessen the negative aspect to it? So it's kind of parallel to that as well, and back to some of the concerns with cyber attacks. One of the things that I became aware of probably only within the past 12 to 18 months or so. So this is something else that's evolving. But these days, there's an intelligence aspect to cyber attacks, and that wasn't there. And that wasn't there in the military. It wasn't there in the FBI. It wasn't there with the CISA folks. But they're incorporated a intel analysis into such attacks to try and get ahead of them, so they can start to see the red flags as was brought up a moment ago that serve as sort of a prelude to such an attack. So we become aware of the possibility of such an attack heading our direction, whether I'm representing an organization or it's my laptop at home. And so that is part of the evolution as it applies directly to the cybersecurity world. I do believe that AI offers a benefit, but it's an evolving dynamic that warrants a certain level of control at the same time.
Thank you for that answer, and thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Nunn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, sir. It's good to see you today. Known you a long time. Always appreciated your leadership style going back to our days in the infantry battalion together when you were my battalion commander then. So thank you for being here today. And thank you for putting that cyber exercise together. That was very helpful for me when I was able to attend, and I think it'll be very helpful to our Commonwealth overall. Thinking about our role as legislators, I want to try to understand how your organization can help us do the right thing for the Commonwealth. So would it be possible to get a report of locals that you've assessed, green, amber, red, and maybe those that you have not, black, so we can have a better understanding of the landscape across the Commonwealth as far as their readiness for a cyber attack, and then maybe another report to help us understand what your capabilities or assets are to help them on a moving forward basis, both in terms of assessments but also incident response.
So Senator Nunn, I appreciate the question, and to be straightforward with you, I think we can certainly share with you where we have or we have not done such an assessment. And I don't know what the real legal term would be, but I'm thinking of whatever the legal counterpart to HIPAA violations are. I think if I'm a local government entity, municipality, even though, if you will, we're all on the same team, is that information I, as a local county judge executive, would want to release to anybody? So I think there's a legal component in that releasability, if you will. But for the prospect of working with you, ladies and gentlemen, to get word out to all the counties that we can do such an assessment, what I would really hope at a future date to come back and share with you, of the 120 counties, for example, to share with you, hey, as of today, we've done 5 assessments. And then say I come back a year from now and I'd be able to share we've done 25 assessments. So that's growing in its dynamic. And the goal, obviously, is 120 such assessments, at least at county level. That's the type of metric, at least now into the midterm, I'd want to pursue and I would recommend to you, because to be able to push for local organizations, government organizations to invite us in. At this junction, and again, I defer to your all's knowledge collectively, I am not the IT expert in the Kentucky National Guard, nor am I the cyber expert. Perhaps some of you all are, but I'm fortunate and I'm blessed to work with the knowledgeable folks who are. I believe that in some of our local counties and levels of government, they unfortunately don't have such expertise either. And so it's kind of the proverbial, they don't know what they don't know. And I don't want to be seen as the Guard taking a heavy hand and coming in and pushing our ability with them, kind of coupled with that mindset as well. When we go out and we make these cyber assessments, we do not do so in uniform. It doesn't have a great visual if you've got soldiers coming in combat fatigues and combat boots, and they're helping out. These days in particular, it might be read some with some other message, but to kind of keep it a low profile and yet to cause folks to want to reach out to us and engage. So it's just the metric for complete inclusion at this junction that I believe is what we should focus on, if that makes sense.
Follow up, Mr. Chair. Thank you. And, sir, like I said, I've always appreciated and respected your approach, and what you said makes a lot of sense. So maybe a different tack, because I do worry a lot about this threat and the risk associated with it. In my civilian career, they took us from a very sophisticated cyber organization, took us to MIT, and IBM has a kind of a center there where they hack your company and put you through that. And I mean, we were exposed and shown just how unsophisticated we truly were and what kind of risks there were. And that's from a private sector that invests in a lot of money in cybersecurity. So I worry about some of our local governments and some of the first responders there that we might rely on if there's a massive New Madrid event in Western Kentucky or something like that. So have significant concerns here. So maybe we can work together to figure out how we can finesse our way. I like your ideas, but we might need to do something legislatively to ensure that these locals are really being assessed and understand the risk and what vulnerabilities they have.
Yes, sir. And so if I can add to what you just said, and again, I'm aware through you ladies and gentlemen and through our legislative body that there is a movement ahead to stand up, if you will, and perhaps just my name, but a Bluegrass Cyber Center. And what I'm getting to there is what we're doing right now and with this exercise, and it'll continue to evolve and grow, but I'm not striving to take anything away from the prospect. I'm very much a proponent of the potential for standing up a Bluegrass Cyber Center. My thinking is that those two actions are parallel to one another. And so at the point when we have a Bluegrass Cyber Center, that what we've done will just slide right into that and can fit and augment whatever sort of structure it evolves to, if that makes sense. Thanks, sir.
Well, thank you, Major General Lamberton. We often don't associate our National Guard with cybersecurity, so I really want to say thank you for bringing this to our to the committee. And when we discuss when you were discussing cybersecurity, I want to applaud your efforts in the partnerships and the associations on the local level and on the state level that you have obviously made inroads with, and that are required and necessary if we're going to be better prepared as a Commonwealth. So I want to applaud those efforts. And you spoke earlier of deployments. As you deploy your teams out across the Commonwealth to assess these cyber threats, and our National Guard is used in so many different ways. You've been deployed for natural disasters, here with cybersecurity, recent plane crash in Louisville, assisting our emergency responders. And there's so many different deployments that you all are a critical piece of in protecting our Commonwealth. Does the Kentucky National Guard have any current deployments, any coming up that you can share with us, regarding not just cybersecurity or plane crashes or natural disasters, but we get questions about, is our National Guard involved in border security and those type of things? Could you elaborate just a little bit about how those deployments get tasked and to our National Guard, and if we're involved in any of those as well?
Sure. So Senator, I'll break that down into two categories. So deployments for what we'd refer to as domestic operations versus deployments that we'd refer to for overseas operations. And as some of y'all are probably already aware, we've had Kentucky Guardsmen on the southwest border for years. We don't have anybody who's currently there right now. But for a while, we were one of the more engaged states for the number of soldiers that we were sending down there. And so that was working out not only through the Department of Defense or Department of War, but the DHS of Homeland Security at this junction as well. So that piece is ongoing. And this is what I thought you were alluding to initially. We do have a upcoming overseas deployment, and I believe I had shared this with a number of y'all previously, but come next fall, our infantry battalion, which is headquartered out of Barville, not Barberville, but Barville, Kentucky, is heading over to the European continent next fall, so late in this calendar year, and they're also going to be coupled with the headquarters element of our 1792nd CSSB, but a support battalion as well. The environment that they're going to be in, it's not as contentious as Afghanistan and Iraq has been, but it still is a number of overseas deployments have these days. There is a risk associated with it, and to be straightforward, I don't want to go into further detail on it right now, but that is happening. Actually, I said this year, I was wrong, but later in 2026.
How do those deployments get tasked to you and to the National Guard here?
So the tasking usually, because the Guard, as you all are aware, we've got the Army and the air component, and so obviously it originates at DOD or DOW level, comes down to the appropriate service, in this case Army, but which looks at the force structure and makes the decision on either a regular Army and active duty force or a National Guard force. These days, the Guard is much more called upon than it was 2+ decades ago, and in spite of the risk, and if you want to get into it, I'll share with you my thoughts, but I think that's beneficial for the organization because we're the beneficiaries of such a deployed experience, and so the expertise, the professionalism, the proficiency of the Guard today is hugely beyond where it was 2 decades ago. The Guard, in turn, the National Guard Bureau, in conjunction with the Department of the Army, looks at the available force structure, and they refer to a program they call GIF map, but the Global Force military management program for the array of forces and who's available and who fits that type of a mission. And then in just about every case, while an overseas deployment is also done in what's referred to as a Title 10 status, or U.S. Code Title 10, where they basically are the same organization as Representative Roberts was querying a little bit ago, as the active duty forces, receiving all the benefits of the active duty forces, but they come under presidential and DOD authority at that junction. And it's a transfer of our force structure still with gubernatorial approval to that operation.
Well, thank you, Major General Lamberton. I appreciate your willingness to come today to the committee and to give these updates on our security issues. One of our main tasks here as the Veterans and Military Affairs is public protection, and these cyber attacks can be detrimental to our businesses, our communities, our families, way beyond just our military installations, and so. We have a lot of adversarial opponents out there that are constantly, obviously, according to your report, with numbers of cyber attacks against our communities. So, on a monthly basis, and so we need to be prepared. And I applaud your efforts in leading the way on that. So, thank you very much for that. Representative Bratcher, we have one more question, and please make it quick. We do have another group that's coming up here next, so if you can make this a quick one.
Yes, sir. Thank you, General, and thank you all for coming today. It's being a member of the National Guard is very rewarding, and I appreciate that. But I do recognize the challenges that you have, and I appreciate you all looking into the future to identify the risk in the future of what's going on. But I specifically want to thank you all for responding to that the plane crash. I think that the Air National Guard Fire Department, who's trained in rescue operations and plane crashes, responded very quickly and was one of the first on scene, as well as the Army, the joint force that comes together to do the civil support team was there as well. So I appreciate your response. It seems like every month we're coming up with between flooding and between tornadoes and riots and everything else, we're calling the National Guard more and more, it seems like, every month. And that's just on a state mission, not to mention the federal missions. And that there's been times where National Guard members of Kentucky have been on every continent at the same time, different person at the same time. So I appreciate what you all do. And perhaps, if it's okay with Chairman Deneen, we can have the members that responded to that fire that were National Guard members come in front of our committee for recognition. Thank you. Thanks, Senator.
So, sir, if I can real quick, and I defer to your time
Absolutely,
management.
sir. Go ahead.
But one final thing I wanted to share with you, and if I am messing with your agenda, just tell me how many push-ups you want me to knock out and which arm you want me to do them on. But I wanted to introduce you all to the 4 members of the Kentucky National Guard, and on the slide displayed in front of everybody. So these are 4 folks, and the 2 gentlemen on the far left and the far right, Sergeant Miller and Sergeant Keller, they're out of our part of the air wing we refer to as our STS, or Special Tactics Squadron. Anybody who's worked in the special ops community, whether they're a Ranger or SF Special Forces, I think we even refer to the SEALs as being part of that community. But this is the Air Force component that works with them. But both these gentlemen, for their actions in Afghanistan, received, and one even by the CSAF, the Chief of Staff of the Air Force, an Air Force Cross. And for those of you who may not be familiar with the Air Force Cross is second only to the Medal of Honor for a combative action displaying heroism. And each of these folks who received it, in the past 2+ decades, there have only been 9 Air Force Crosses that have been received. 2 of them here in the Kentucky National Guard. Of the other 2 folks in there, in the center is displayed on the picture, Master Sergeant, but he's now Sergeant Major 9, and Sergeant Hester. They were part of a security force for a convoy in Iraq, and this particular convoy came under attack, and the attack was such that it stopped their movement. Sergeant 9 and Sergeant Hester dismounted their vehicles, responded to the attackers with small arms and hand grenades, basically were able to not only fight off the attackers who intended on hostile actions, but capturing some of the members of this particular convoy for other nefarious reasons. But Sergeant Major 9 received the Army Distinguished Service Cross, again, the equivalent to the Air Force Cross, and Sergeant Hester, the Silver Star. The Silver Star, as some of you know, is 3rd in the order of recognition for heroism. She, to date, is one of only 9 women in the military who've received a Silver Star, and she is the only woman in the military who's received a Silver Star for direct contact with an enemy force. In other words, the other women, that they were, for example, medics or medical officers rendering aid to other service members while under fire, but Sergeant Hester was firing back. And so I introduce each one of these folks to your all's awareness. This is the quality of the men and women you've got in the Kentucky National Guard. This is the quality of service members that we've got in our force structure today. And so I appreciate the offer to being able to speak of my favorite subject, the Kentucky National Guard, but it is much more than me, and it's the quality of the people that we got in our organization that make a difference for all of us. Thank you.
All right, thank you. With no other questions for Major General Lamberton, then we would like to thank you again, sir, for your presentation. Very informative, and we're so very proud that we have great representatives like you and the members of our National Guard that are taking care of the Commonwealth. So thank you, and be sure to pass our gratitude on to those that are serving alongside you, sir.
Thanks,
Thank
sir.
you. At this time, we'd like to invite our next presenters up from Fort Knox and Fort Campbell, Colonel David Holstead Fort Knox Garrison Commander, and Shannon Lane, Director of Military Affairs from Christian County Chamber of Commerce. And while they're making their way to the table, I would also like to take the liberty to again recognize a visitor from my district. Lieutenant Colonel Terry Owens is with us today. She got in here just a little bit a while ago, so thank you for being with us, Miss Owen. We are so glad to have you with us today.
Chairman Deneen, Chairman McCool, and distinguished members of the committee, appreciate the opportunity to come join you today. I want to begin by thanking this committee and the Commonwealth as a whole for your enduring partnership with Fort Knox and its soldiers, families, civilian employees who call Kentucky home.
Just for a second,
Yep.
make sure please have everybody just introduce themselves for the record, please,
Will
before
do.
we get rolling.
Will do. So,
Go right ahead.
My name is Colonel Dave Holstead. I've been in the Army for 25 years. I'm the Fort Knox Garrison Commander. Assumed command roughly 100 days ago. This is my fourth time to Fort Knox. Started my Army career here 25 years ago as an armor officer. Most recently was here at HRC from 21 to 23, and several other temporary assignments here as well. So we love this region, this community so much that we will end our career here as well, and we'll retire here sometime in the next 2 to 4 years here and make Kentucky our permanent home. On a personal note also, I know she stepped out, but I just wanted to give a note to Representative Proctor. Before this, I called Texas home, and I'm a fighting Texas Aggie, and we happen to be 9-0, so I just want to throw that out there. So Fort Knox is – what's that? Go ahead. Oh, yeah. Sorry.
All right. Shannon Lane, Director of Military Affairs of the Southwest Kentucky region surrounding Fort Campbell. I was stationed – spent 22 years, just under 22 years in the United States Army, served 3 times in Fort Campbell, also spent a tour at Fort Knox. So the Military Affairs Committee is growing as a regional approach. So we do represent Todd Trigg, Christian, and Hopkins County now, trying to make a holistic effort down there to support Fort Campbell and its efforts.
And then Lance O'Brien, I'm the president CEO of the Knox Regional Development Alliance and representing the greater Fort Knox defense community. And like Colonel Holstead here, I'm very excited about Fort Knox.
Okay, so Fort Knox has stood proudly in central Kentucky now for 107 years, and over that time, the installation and the state have built a bond that's rooted in patriotism, service, and shared commitment to national defense. As of today, I'm pleased to provide a brief update on where we stand, our mission, some challenges that we do face, but most importantly, the tremendous support that we receive from the Commonwealth. First, on the spirit of partnership that defines Fort Knox and surrounding communities, something powerfully demonstrated earlier this year has been alluded to already in this meeting, with the historic flooding that struck parts of Kentucky in early April. When that disaster unfolded, dozens of Fort Knox soldiers volunteered their time and helped affected communities, working side by side with the American Red Cross and other agencies, gathering, distributing supplies, and even volunteering to answer phones during a Louisville radio telethon. Fort Knox Fire Department also responded to several mutual aid requests across Bullitt and Hardin counties, conducting water rescues and helping remove residents from flooded home. Also of note, most recently last week during the tragic plane crash in Louisville, another mutual aid request from Bullitt County. Fort Knox responded to that as well, providing backfill so that Bullitt County could fully support the efforts there at the crash site. Our Fort Knox-based U.S. Army Reserve Aviation Command conducted aerial assessments during the flooding as well, in coordination with our range branch, giving local leaders real-time imagery of the flood's impacts across the region. These are all examples of teamwork. Soldiers, first responders, and citizens coming together in a time of need. And this is a perfect example of what makes our partnership so strong. The relationship between Fort Knox and the Commonwealth also extends well beyond just emergency response and things like that. It's also an economic powerhouse and remains to be so. Our annual installation output is about $5.6 billion, of which $1.3 billion is payroll. Within 40 miles of the installation, over 60,000 military retirees and their dependents live, work, and invest in local communities. That enduring presence reflects deep and lasting ties between Army and the Commonwealth of Kentucky. In fiscal year 2025 alone, Fort Knox Contracting Command awarded more than $484 million in contracts to small businesses supporting operations across the installation. Many of these companies are based right here in Kentucky, employing Kentuckians and providing vital services, construction, logistics, IT, engineering, training, and more. And all of this keeps our mission running both for the Army and for our nation. Like the rest of the Army, though, we are not without challenges, and we are currently adapting under the Army Transformation Initiative, which is designed to modernize and align with national defense priorities. As part of this effort, several Fort Knox organizations have been restructured and or slated for inactivation, including 1st Army Division East, the 19th Engineer Battalion, the Reserve Aviation Units like 8th Battalion, 229th Air Assault Helicopter Battalion, and the 244th Expeditionary Combat Aviation Brigade. These changes, combined with some other personnel decrements within command, retirements, natural attrition, and a continuing hiring freeze, have contributed to what we now project to be an overall workforce reduction of about 1,975 people. However, even with these adjustments, Fort Knox continues to stand among the most capable and mission-critical installations in the Army. As a single enterprise and location, Fort Knox is second only to UPS as Kentucky's largest employer, with a weekday population of roughly 26,000. We are also home to several major Army commands, all of which are led by general officers, including 5th Corps, U.S. Army Recruiting Command, U.S. Army Cadet Command, and U.S. Army Human Resources Command, 1st Theater Sustainment Command, and the 84th Training Command. We're also home to the combination of these organizations and missions make Fort Knox truly one of a kind in the Army. And it's really what makes Fort Knox unique. No other installation brings together such a powerful mix of operational, training, sustainment, and human resource functions, all in one location. This unique concentration of capabilities allows Fort Knox to influence virtually every stage of a soldier's career, from recruitment to commissioning to deployment and retirement, and supports multiple theaters across the world, including Central Command and European Command. Many of our missions have global reach, spanning worldwide, and our units and installations and organizations play a central role in recruiting, training, and supporting the warfighter. This makes Fort Knox indispensable to the Army readiness and to national security. It must also be said that Fort Knox continues to stand out across the Army for several other reasons. First, energy security. We are capable of powering 100% of the installation independently, giving Fort Knox the best military energy resilience program in the nation. That's all installations, but Army, Navy, Air Force, and Marine. Training capacity. Our world-class ranges include the newly transformed Yano range, which underwent $56 million in overhaul to become one of only 3 digital air-ground integration ranges in the United States. Finally, our strategic location in central Kentucky makes it ideal for cost-effective movement of people and equipment across the nation. This is not completely unlike the reasoning why UPS is hubbed in Louisville as well. We're also proud to host a major training event for the United States Army annually, which is the Cadet Summer Training, in which all Army ROTC programs send their cadets here for final certification before commissioning. We also host the JRTC Raider Challenge, which was postponed due to the government shutdown, but will occur this spring in 2026. So suffice to say, Fort Knox has a lot to offer. Speaking of a lot to offer, the surrounding Central Kentucky region provides a first-rate quality of life, unmatched hospitality, and genuine patriotic support for the military. Again, that's why we're staying. We plan to call this home because of our relationship with the people in Central Kentucky in Hardin, Meade, Bullitt, and Jefferson counties. That said, the housing shortage across Kentucky, right now estimated at more than 200,000 units, is especially acute in the Fort Knox area, due to the rapid regional growth with major developments with Blue Oval SK and Nucor. Affordable quality housing is increasingly hard to find within a reasonable commute of the installation. The challenge impacts readiness, retention, and family well-being. We appreciate any support that the Commonwealth can provide in encouraging development that meets the needs of middle-income families, both military and civilian. Another issue in which we are dedicating significant time towards concerns land uses near Fort Knox. My garrison team is working closely with regional and state partners through the Compatible Use Plan, or CUP, which was completed in 2022 by the Lincoln Trail Area Development District, and then followed up by the couple implementation plan earlier this year. These efforts help balance responsible growth while protecting the military installation at the same time. We greatly appreciate Senator Nadine, your and the state legislature's efforts considering ways to give military installations a voice in local planning and zoning matters, including possibility of an ex officio role. This kind of collaboration would help installations provide timely input on development and rezoning proposals that could impact mission readiness and national security. We also encourage renewed attention to Kentucky's Purchase of Agricultural Conservation Easements, or PACE program, allowing landowners near Fort Knox to voluntarily sell their development rights that helps preserve farmland, prevent encroachment, which protects both agriculture and national defense, a true win-win. Another area where continued partnership between state and federal government is essential involves juvenile justice jurisdiction on military installations. In cases involving serious offenses committed by juveniles on Fort Knox, Kentucky jurisdiction is often needed to ensure appropriate level of deterrence and access to rehabilitation programs. The federal court system is not equipped to handle juvenile cases, and while there have been some interim solutions, gaps do remain. In 1999, the governor of Kentucky accepted jurisdiction from the Army through the retrocession of jurisdiction, allowing the state to assist in cases involving juvenile offenders on the Fort Knox installation. This retrocession has been very helpful over the years, but because there is no Kentucky statute addressing this specific issue, questions have occasionally arisen regarding the exact role and authority of state courts, prosecutors, law enforcement, and corrections officials. To our understanding, Fort Campbell faces an even larger jurisdictional gap over juvenile offenses on the Kentucky portion of the multi-state installation. I'd like to now quickly turn our attention to something near and dear to my heart, having been to Fort Knox 4 times, the General George Patton Museum of Leadership. Located on Dixie Highway, it's on Fort Knox property and continues to attract more than 50,000 visitors annually and serves as an important educational and tourism asset for the state, especially during cadet summer training in the summer months. Although the Army is currently reviewing several field museums for potential closure, we continue to advocate strongly for the Patton Museum, given its central role in telling Kentucky's military story, as well as an important leadership avenue for cadets coming through cadet summer training. For awareness, news about this potential closure and ways the state might be able to help preserve the Patton Museum were briefed by the Knox Regional Development Alliance, led by Lance here, at the most recent Interim Joint Committee on Tourism, Small Business, and Information Technology. Preserving Kentucky's proud military legacy through institutions like the Patton Museum goes hand in hand with policies that support our current and former service members. The Commonwealth's continued commitment in both areas speaks volume about its enduring partnerships with the local community. As further evidence, we appreciate the sustained efforts to reduce the tax burden on military retirees, as well as initiatives like the vehicle tax credits for service members relocating from other states. I'm a beneficiary of that as well. These steps strengthen the state's reputation as one of the most military-friendly in the nation. We also commend the legislature's leadership in adopting nearly all Department of Defense priority professional licensing compacts, which expand employment opportunities for military spouses, of which, again, I benefit. I'd like to especially thank Mr. Steve Bullard and the Kentucky Commission on Military Affairs for their consistent partnership in advancing these efforts. Finally, I have to brag a little bit here. This year, Fort Knox was honored as the Commander-in-Chief's Award for Installation Excellence, recognized as the best Army installation in the world. This award validates what those of us in Kentucky already know. Fort Knox leads the way in readiness, energy resilience, training capacity, and community partnership. The support we received from the Commonwealth was a major factor in earning that distinction, and that's something of which we all can take great pride. In closing, I want to again thank this committee and the people of this Commonwealth for your unwavering support to Fort Knox and the men and women who serve there. Thank you.
All right, thank you for your presentation. Do I have any questions from any committee members regarding the presentation at this time? All right, Senator Reed.
Morning, Colonel. Just had a quick question here. I was just curious what level of government we would need to achieve in order to maybe gain access or inspect the gold on Fort Knox?
I cannot confirm or deny the presence of gold on Fort Knox. No, that is run by the Department of Treasury. I was read onto it, but I still cannot confirm or deny that there's any gold there.
Understood. Thank you, Colonel.
Senator Higdon.
Colonel, just wanted to say thanks, and I hear a lot of good things about the cadet summer training at Fort Knox, and what a class act that is. I know it's a wonderful experience. I experienced it way back in 1974 at Fort Riley, Kansas, and it was a big time in my life. And I know it. I can't tell you all the stories, but what the old drill sergeant told me that we wouldn't get that summer, and sleep was one of them. And but he said we didn't need it.
No.
But anyway,
that's still true, Senator.
I just wanted to comments I wanted to make at this summer. I happened to be at the little airport when the cadets were coming in and flying home, and there was a large group of them that I talked to, and I asked them if they told me about their experiences, and I asked them if they met a couple of my friends while they were there, and they kind of looked at me, what friends are you talking about? And I asked about agony, heartbreak, and misery. And they had met them and smiled about it. So anyway, just thank you for your work on that. It's a great program.
Thanks, sir.
This earlier this summer, before I oppose, maybe elaborate just a little bit on some of your presentation. Earlier this summer, I had the privilege of visiting both Fort Campbell and speaking with Mr. Lane, and of course, I see Mr. Burton on a regular basis, Lance, and around Elizabethtown and in the Fort Knox area. I want to applaud Knox Regional Development Alliance. It's wonderful, the work that you all have been able to do to advocate for what Fort Knox brings to our communities in the surrounding area, and not just in the Hardin County area, but in our entire Commonwealth. It's been a wonderful relationship, and I want to thank you for all your advocacy that you do in D.C. to bring attention to what is important to our communities surrounding our military installations. And that kind of leads me into the mention that you had earlier about the importance of the areas that surround our post. We've had lots of conversations about adversarial countries, cybersecurity issues, people wanting to come buy up land that is close to our military installations. And we've seen a lot of this in our area, and I know and around Fort Campbell that we have participants that don't have the greatest actions involved, and I guess intentions involved. And these end up in our planning and zoning committees. Right. And sometimes they end up there without a voice from our military installations. And so I know every member of this committee was sent out a copy of a bill that I will be personally introducing in this upcoming session called the Military Installations Protection Act. That bill is an opportunity to allow our military installations to have a voice as an ex officio member on our local planning and zoning committees that of any properties or municipalities that are up against our military installations. It may be county, maybe cities, but that expands also into our National Guard armories and all of our military installations and weapons depots. So it's not a shall, it is, it is a may in this bill. And that means that these local planning and zoning committees, your judge executives, your mayors, may open up a ex officio membership to their planning and zonings to give our military folks just a seat at the table to when these things are brought about, planning and zoning changes, potential developments that are butted up against firing ranges and other areas. As we know, planning and zoning membership changes quite often with elections and appointments, and so this gives a steady voice for our military installations, just to be there to when those things come up to voice any national security concerns they may have. And after meeting with both Fort Campbell and Fort Knox personnel and you all here at the table, it's a critical role. and it's very important to our national security, and we want to protect those that protect us.
Yes, sir.
And that's the bottom line here. And so, although they don't have a vote when it comes to that, but it does give them the opportunity to speak up on those planning and zoning committees and get those agendas emailed to them as members of those committees, as ex officio non-voting members. So I think it's a critical security issue that has national security ramifications far beyond just the Commonwealth. So I look forward to introducing that bill in the upcoming session with your support. Yes, and those, and we will be talking to other county associations and League of Cities and others that may be impacted by this as well. So I want to thank you for your presentation today.
Yes,
if there is not any other business before this committee, then we stand adjourned. Oh,
Yep.
I apologize. Apologize. Yes,
Gentlemen,
sir.
if you guys don't mind, I'd like to give you just a brief update from Fort Campbell and some of the things
Well, I apologize. I did not mean to cut you off there. Thank you.
No, sir. I'll make it quick. I'll tell you, Colonel Holstead I could pretty much read his script, and that's going to be replace Fort Knox with Fort Campbell. Probably a lot of the same challenges and things that are going on. One of the things that wasn't really heavily addressed that I would like to bring up is our federal workforce with the shutdown. Our community has done quite a bit to embrace those employees, both from Fort Campbell and the surrounding community, trying to alleviate some of the stress. Some of those efforts have gone into food distribution. Some of them went into resource fairs. We realized in a lot of our research that we had a higher community impact with our federal workforce than we anticipated, of almost 8,400 just in 2-county region. So that includes our U.S. Census Bureau, our IRS, our Social Security Office, TSA, National Transportation Safety Board, and our FAA. So those numbers are pretty heavy, but the impacts to Fort Campbell and the life-sustaining offices were pretty drastic. You know, we have over 500 federal employees that work in the hospital or medical fields there at Fort Campbell that were impacted. Over 200 in the Department of Public Works, and, you know, just like at Fort Knox, our teachers there are federal employees. They are not county staff or part of a school board like anywhere else. You know, so I think those are positions that are overlooked, and some of the things that I think we could do better as a Commonwealth is try to provide some kind of protection to those workforce employees, leaning forward, looking at what options we have when, say, unemployment. How can we get them access to unemployment during that time so that they don't have to go through so much stress? And what can we do to kind of better protect them in those times so they can continue to provide those services without going further into debt? Many of them were considered, especially when you're talking the medical and the schools, were considered critical. So they had to continue going to work without pay for coming up on 45 days. Of course, I think we all hope today is going to be the day that ends it, right? But where did they get the money for the last 43 days they didn't get paid? They put it on credit cards. They accrued debt without any kind of protection at all. So that is one of the big impacts in the community. I'll say there's a couple other small things that at Fort Campbell we're excited about. One, in the bill we do look to see our air traffic control tower that's been in desperate need of some repairs or to be replaced, to be honest, for many years. That is looking to be in there. So that's going to be a major win for us as a region down there to keep those services up so that way we can keep our aviation incidents down. The other thing I would like to bring up is on the housing area. Again, I'm going to echo some of the same things my colleague to my right had brought up. You know, the housing market is short in our region. Our local elected officials are doing what they can to kind of bring in new blood to try to see who will develop. They've done a lot of advocacy efforts. I've been alongside them in that efforts. But where and what we can do to apply a little pressure to kind of help alleviate that housing shortage for the median income family will be a benefit not only to the Fort Campbell community, but to our surrounding community as well. Some of the challenges we're facing that exasperate that, are some of our efforts to bring that housing on Fort Campbell up. And again, I'm going to do this from a foxhole of a community leader, not as from the garrison standpoint. They have a hard enough job to do without somebody speaking on their behalf. But some of the things I've been involved in and trying to help with Fort Campbell is from the Environmental Protection Agency standpoint. You know, when you have a house with a good bone, with a good foundation, that foundation doesn't need to be redone, but from time to time the floors do, the walls do. Fort Campbell found in some of their research that their foundations of their previous infrastructure were well sustaining for the future. So what they opted to do to kind of save resources and to build upon was to utilize some of the old foundation of the housing areas and build new infrastructure on it that was modernized to help especially the lower enlisted soldiers, to get them adequate housing. During the time of the demo, and our EPA friends came in and did a thorough inspection and testing the soils around those housings. And from years of pesticide use, you know, they found that the pesticide use was too high for exposure rate over a 27-year period. Well, some of the things in our knowledge books as community leaders and for the VMAP to be aware of is the chances of someone living in an on-post housing facility for 27 years, you have a better chance of winning the lottery and being the president. I mean, you have to be both, you know, to do both to get that. I mean, that lower enlisted housing typically is going to be a 4-6 year at the most time frame if they're going to be looking. And 6 years is pretty stretching it. By that time, you usually have had kids, you usually have promoted up, or you've gotten out, right? One of those three things that have caused you to move from one housing area to another. So I think if we could, some of the things we can consider in the future as far as on the Kentucky side to better partner with Fort Campbell and possibly with Fort Knox in the same boat, is what can we do to kind of educate our local offices on how housing and our soldiers are stationed and restationed and moved throughout their career. So to go back to the example, 27 years is the study that they've done for their soil sample, that we provide a protection there, that we know that those soldiers aren't going to live in those houses for 27 years. What the options are is to scrape the ground and to remove all the soil, and a very high costly operation to be done, to look out for somebody that's going to live in a house for 27 years when the likelihood is less than 1%. All right. So that's something. The other thing is, we like to echo some of the same sentiments. When we had the flooding back in April, Fort Campbell soldiers came out in force. They weren't directed to do so. They took their uniforms off and they came out the gates and on their own time to go make sure their houses are taken care of, to fill sandbags, to help take people out from their homes, to provide assistance to our community. You know, we recognize them down there in our local area for their efforts. And I'll tell you, the partnership between Fort Campbell and the surrounding community, I would have to say that ours is probably a little stronger than yours. We're going to say that because I truly believe that Fort Campbell community is one of the best homes in the Army. So go ahead. I know you want to respond.
I've been to both places and I disagree.
But
all right. Well, thank you very much, and I apologize again for trying to adjourn the meeting before we had a chance to hear from Fort Campbell and the folks down there. I know both Fort Knox and Fort Campbell are critical to the success of their communities and to the Commonwealth as a whole. And so we're blessed to have you, and we want to continue to make Kentucky the best place to serve in the military and to retire. So thank you all for being with us today. We look forward to the upcoming session where we might be able to tackle some of these issues. And I know we have a housing task force coming up here, I believe, at 1 o'clock. So I'm sure some of those issues may be discussed there as well. So again, thank you for your time today to be with us. All right. Thank you to all of our guests that have been here today. We appreciate you being with us. And I know we had some members that had to head out earlier for some other commitments. And so we appreciate them being here by Zoom and being here when they could for the committee meeting, although they had to head out early. So without that said, do I have a motion to adjourn finally? All right, motion.